Hi, I'm Femi OK. Welcome to the bonus edition of The Stream. It's a show that brings you the candid conversations I have with the guests after the live broadcast. Coming up, the Tunisian singer-songwriter Emel Mathlouthi. But let's start with classical music. For the first time since the Metropolitan Opera House was founded 138 years ago, it is staging a production by an African-American composer. Fire Shut Up in My Bones is the story of a young man's journey from hardship to success. It was co-directed by Camille Brown, the libretto is by Cassie Lemons, and the music was composed by the celebrated jazz musician and composer Terence Blanchard. Here's Terence.
I wanted this opera and everything that I write to sound natural and feel natural coming off the voice. So I would read the libretto out loud. And when I would read the libretto out loud, I would hear the rhythms of that. I would hear the da-da-da-da-da, hear bump, and see, that would start to inform me what the melody should be, what the piece should be. Then I would just take it from there. And then I would have these workshops with a certain person who's on this screen with me right now. And then they would tell me about how I'm about to kill their voice by writing too many high notes for them.
Well, certain person, would that certain person like to speak up, please?
Not true. Only a little bit. No, Terence knows I love.
Terence is gonna kill me. Yes.
No, I love singing Terence's music. Come on, he knows that.
Yeah. Oh no,
But,
of course. Yeah, that's fun.
Composers sometimes like to indulge, and you say, "I gotta sing for 2.5 hours."
Like, save it. I've got to save something. I've got to save something for Act 3. Is there like a Terence? You can tell us. This is our secret. This is the extra stream extra. Was there a sort of 101 to opera conventions that you looked at and then threw away, or did you just know it because I knew that your dad loved opera music, so it kind of seeped into you as you were growing up?
Part of it was the fact that my father loved opera, and I heard a lot of opera growing up. But then the other part of it was, I just loved the form myself. And the main thing is you want to tell a story. So when it comes time to tell a story, there's a certain kind of structure that you want to have to do, just the normal beginning, middle, and the end. And to Karen's point, that also goes into how you want to write for the voices, because you want to make sure that those voices at pivotal moments have that registered or have those melodies that could really allow them to blossom and really express themselves. And when Karen did the first production of Fire Shut Up in My Bones, she helped me a great deal in understanding just that in terms of like howing to save certain phrases for certain parts of the opera to make sure that there can be a climax in the piece.
Yeah. Michael, you know opera so well. When you look at new operas being written, one of the comments that we had on YouTube was that opera shouldn't be an old art form. It should continue to develop. Sometimes we get stuck in the old art form. What are the trends that you're seeing right now? What gives you hope? What are you excited about?
Well, a couple of things, because I think it is opera does rely on the canon. The industry just relies on the certain shows, certain composers, and that's part of it. For me, I actually think, and maybe, my bias as a director and choreographer is that I think what's also interesting to me is when we're reimagining the classics and reimagining the canon and reimagining how can we tell those stories in a new and an exciting way, in a way that that is palatable to the people we want to see the shows. And then I'm also really excited people like Terence and people who are actually like writing in a way that's sort of adding to the storytelling of opera, that we're not, going into a place that's completely different, but we're actually widening the table. We're letting more voices at the table. We're not getting rid of Puccini in order to add Terence Blanchard, but we're actually adding Terence Blanchard to the storytelling that we get to tell.
Karen, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking two things, and I love Terence, and I know he would support me in saying this. I wish there was more discussion around Casey Lemons and Camille as well, because they made history too. And Terrence knows this, that I'm super, super, super supportive of women in opera, particularly diversity behind the stage, you know, gender and race inclusive. And I wish that we saw more Black women outside of just being singers, and but actually creators in the way we see in other art forms, the way we see in literature, the way we see in dance, you know. It also makes us believe that we have second careers outside of just singing.
Yeah.
You know, so I wish, and I know Terrence has as many women in his life, you know, and I know like I
Ooh,
wish
leaning into that. But I know you mean
she means that
as
many women
collaborators
that are running my life and helping
Oh,
me
okay.
and supporting me.
Well, then that is as it should be, Terrence, obviously.
No, but to her point, she is exactly right. One of the things that I've been screaming about is how much of a genius Camille Brown is. I've been saying it over and over again. You know, Casey Lemons has also been my sister for a number of years. We've worked together, and there would be no Fire Shut Up in My Bones if it wasn't for her beautiful libretto. Yeah. She took that story that most people couldn't see an opera in, and she created something extremely beautiful. She also created two characters, Loneliness and Destiny, that's not in the book.
Yeah.
You know, and they manifest themselves into a third character, Greta. You know, so it goes without saying that their contributions are huge, you know, into the development of this production. And we need to celebrate them just like we need to celebrate anybody else who's been a part of this production. The young kids that have been a part of this production who are amazing singers. The chorus, I tell people all the time, one of the things that's been blowing me away about this thing is that you don't know what it feels like to walk into a room of 40 people and be the only person that can't sing. You know?
Yeah, I actually, I do know that feeling. But you're the composer, so that's okay. You're a musician. You have other skills. But how wonderful to be surrounded by that talent. Just from watching the clips, the videos, from listening to you talking about it, I really need to see this opera. Now, I may not be able to see it at Metropolitan, but I know it's going to come to Atlanta, it's going to come to DC. This opera is going to go run and run and run and run and run. How exciting is
also
that?
It's going to be simulcast on October 23rd in 70 countries around the world.
Terence Blanchard, Michael Mohammed and Karen Slack bringing their passion for opera to the stream. Fire Shut Up in My Bones will be simulcast in cinemas around the world this month. Go to metopera.org for details. And now to some disturbing video filmed on the Croatia-Bosnia border. In Europe, there are countries that are so determined to keep out asylum seekers that they beat, harass and chase them away from their borders. These pushbacks are illegal and brutal. But some viewers who were watching the stream on YouTube this week suggested that European countries can't save everybody and no visa equals no entry. I shared these sentiments with the guests in our post-show discussion.
We're not saying enough that these people don't have visa, but they cannot have visa because they're asylum seekers. So by definition, they do not have yet legal status. So I think that's maybe a point that we should emphasize.
If we want to talk about law, human rights law, I mean, how people enter a country doesn't matter when they seek asylum, you know. But frankly, to look at the broader picture, migrations have always existed in the history of mankind. The history of mankind is made of migration. So, you know, we are not seeing an invasion, a threat. You know, we are seeing, I mean, something that has always existed, and people always have fled the conflict, fled always poverty, you know. And we should rather try to be proactive and try to manage these phenomena rather than, you know, trying to counter and deter them as it is happening now.
Nicole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what sticked with me in these last 3 years is also a lot of it is happening in Croatia and Bosnia, and these countries they had a war just 27 years ago, and many of the people that you meet there, like the locals, say like we understand the refugees and the asylum seekers because we were in the same role just a really short while ago. So also not forgetting that this is something, as Massimo said, that is has always been with us, that people need to flee from somewhere because their homes are destroyed. And yeah, like for sure you don't have a visa if your house is destroyed or if you can't go back where you have your drawer with your documents. Like, how should you have a visa? If you flee with your children on your arms just out of your country, like you need to go somewhere and just ask for protection. And people should really not forget that this is something that has always been happening to certain groups of people.
Massimo, I feel like the way countries in Europe are dealing with asylum seekers has got more to do with politics than empathy, because it wasn't that many decades ago when most European countries were refugees. Most Europeans were refugees because of the Second World War.
That's correct. Not only most Europeans were refugees because of Second World War II or Second World War, but also many Europeans were economic migrants. I mean, the whole history of Southern Europe is made of economic migration, and now that the standards have changed, probably things improved in the European Union, now people tend quickly to forget what their grandfathers did. I mean, and let's be clear, I mean, these people, our grandfathers were not traveling with visa, with permits. They were traveling exactly the same way like these people are doing today.
Is there a political solution, Camille, do you think? Or are the politicians making the problem?
I think maybe 2 points on that. The first one is remembering that the vast majority of refugees live in low and middle income countries compared to, who lives in Europe. Europe is only receiving, a very small share of these refugees. So that's maybe a first point. As for whether we can find a political solution to the situation, I mean, I think this is yet to be seen. The issue of migration and asylum has become so sensitive since 2015-16. I would say the situation is getting worse after every crisis, of perceived crisis, the fact that there is this perception that we cannot manage new arrivals, and this is making really difficult to find a solution at EU level for a common, harmonized, managed solution to hosting these people. I mean, we've had all this discussion on solidarity, and we're seeing like every time there is this list to deadlocks between EU member states. So I'm not sure there's a solution in sight as to this problem. What is sure is like at operational levels, this is where things can change. This is where independent human rights monitoring mechanism can be set up, and also this is where asylum agency can be more active to make sure that when asylum seekers get to the country, there are adequate reception mechanism, their asylum claim are being processed in due time, so that people have access to a fair process when they get to Europe.
Nicole, you saw up close the violence against asylum seekers. Where do you think that comes from? Because it wasn't just a few bad apples, as some of the government's authorities were saying. It's just a few of them. It's systematic, it's organised, it's funded. I feel like that's beyond prejudice.
Yeah, no, and it's also even orchestrated. So I think that, where does this come from? It's for us still difficult to say if there's even an order to use this violence. What we know that the violence that we filmed is just, let's say, medium violence, or it sounds already so cynical, but there have been cases of sexual harassment, of like real torture or elements of torture. So we are pretty sure, and especially in how widespread these practices are, that there are commands and that there are special groups that are known for doing a very good job at beating people up, because it all is about demotivation. So what they're trying to do is to give all they can, that they don't dare to come back.
You can watch the full episode about the illegal tactics being used on asylum seekers and refugees in Europe at stream.aljazeera.com. Okay, full confession here. When I prepare for election shows, I do a lot of reading, and then I just cross my fingers that the guests we book are really good at explaining domestic issues to an international audience. Just after Iraq's October election, the stream brought together a panel that did a brilliant job of unpacking Iraqi politics.
So in Iraq, we don't have just two parties like there is in the United States or there is in Britain, for example. We have several parties. The voting process also is different on how they vote for parliament members, and different than how it's a direct vote for the president. And also because we have a prime minister, we don't have a president. That's another difference. And then we have the local governments also with that. That also is very different. Over the past 15 years, a lot of the vote has been identity-based. We do see that happening in the United States today. However, in Iraq, it took sometimes it was very violent. We see that also sort of shifting. So unless the international audience understands that, they would not really see how significant these elections have been when newcomers actually broke that chain of the dominance of the mainstream political parties in two very important, very sacred provinces in South Iraq, and also the importance of the Islamic Party kind of being defeated within Sunni politics. That's all very, very important. That's a difference that I would focus on.
All right. Louay, it's so good to have you because you are a politician. You've experienced Iraq politics. How would you describe it from the inside?
No, repeating what Rasha has mentioned, but from an economic perspective, the state patronage very much controls the economy. So everything here in Iraq is state-owned, state-managed, state-controlled, which very much limits the possibility and the opportunities for private sector to flourish. In Iraq, for example, the government is the primary operator of everything, whereas in free market economies, we could see the government's a regulator, a policymaker, and a tax collector, anything but an operator. We don't, like, for example, the United States produces more oil than Iraq and Saudi Arabia put together, but they don't have a national oil company. Where in Iraq, if we want to talk about, for example, privatization and introducing market economy and so on, this is a big red line that we need to explain to the traditional mindset that very much controlling everything.
Anyway, if a young person said to you, I want to be a politician, and they were in Iraq, what would you honestly tell them?
I would honestly advise them to read more about politics in all democracies that basically didn't develop democracies across the world before suggesting anything. I still remember during the days of the protest that young people approached me and saying that we would like to produce similar to the French Revolution. So I told them, did you read anything about the history of the French Revolution? Democracy didn't come in the day after. There was a dictatorship and bloodshed and so on. It's going to be a journey of 200, 250 years. So we really need to think in a different way and much smarter than the past. So I would advise them to read about what's happening across the world before improvising any solution from local mindset.
The big political parties, they're very organized and disciplined in the way they continue to have influence and power. I also know, just as a citizen and being based here, it's very much about the religion and tribes have influence on politics. And you can ask any citizen, any person, any young people here, there's a lot of influence coming from regional countries. And sometimes we feel like we are ruled ruled by neighboring countries. So I think that for the young people, we always feel that you need to belong to a certain political party or institution or group to be able to thrive politically. So, but the young generation are bringing a lot of change. I see there's also, back in the days as a Kurdish woman, I used to have so much fear of anything coming out of the Kurdistan region, because I'm still reminded of a time of how I used to flee from the war that I experienced. But the crisis that happened now, especially women showed that they could really be capable and take on the crisis. And it brought a lot of women from all of the different provinces and cities together. And we kind of found ways to reconcile. And so we have new conversations. I have activists, friends from Baghdad, from Mosul, from Sinjar, from Soleimani and Duhok. We meet more, we gather, we do activities. So the whole conversation around influencing politics or change and policies and laws, especially those very close to my heart, like finding ways to end gender-based violence. The conversation is moving forward. It's shifting. I feel like the young people are just bringing it towards a new way, a new generation, a new road. And so there is definitely so much hope for less complicated politics. But yeah, the way it goes for people like me, it's still very complicated, and we still do our best to understand it, and we can't. But there is social media, and then we reach out to each other. That helps.
Thank goodness for social media. Finally, one of the stream's most memorable music guests returned for a chat via Instagram. Here's Emel Mathlouthi, the Tunisian singer and songwriter, talking about her latest project.
As a woman who's supposedly a feminist, I haven't really cooked so much of that in my own kitchen. And I just had this realization that I wasn't really offering so much space for other female voices. And that as a female voice that always tried to take more space throughout my career, I felt that it was time for me to give back and to also receive, but from a different source, because throughout the many years I was performing and creating and producing albums, I most exclusively worked with men, and I decided that it was the time for me to explore female creativity and female sisterhood. And I just started reaching out to many female producers. And also I had the big motivation that everybody kept telling me that it was impossible, that it was just very hard, that most of the people I was asking didn't know any female producers. So I decided to...
Well, that's really depressing. You're in the music business, so people you were asking didn't know female producers.
Yes, and I even asked, I'm talking about people, in the music business, about people, on the scene, people who are radio programmers. And I'm sure they're coming from a good place. They're not just trying to sabotage anybody. But that's where we are, because even myself, before anybody else, I just, anytime I had the idea of reaching out to somebody, I would always find a lot of male producers or musicians. And I mean, I love all the partners and all my collaborators, and I still collaborate with them. But I just felt that it was the time for me to start taking some action. And I got even more motivated after all the complications. And the complications kept coming along the way, because also a lot of female, we tend to not trust each other enough and to not trust ourselves as, as people who have a voice, and we can accomplish so much. And we can accomplish even more together. And it might sound like a cliche, it might sound like cute and cheesy, but it's not that simple. And I found myself really supported in a way that I haven't felt it before. And I found myself creating and interacting in ways I haven't interacted and created before.
Emil Mathuthi on Instagram Live, wrapping up our show today. Thanks for watching. See you next time.